I don't necessarily understand the concept of being a fan of a specific team or of specific players. Hi, I'm Ava and this is Caelia. Welcome to our channel and to my very small kitchen. Today I'm going to be cooking pate choux, which is the base that you use for éclair, while talking about sports fandom through the lens of ice hockey, since that is the sport I actually enjoy watching.
I love her so much.
Alright, of course, since I started the video with the puppy in my hands, we're washing our hands first.
Let's get started! Why are you looking at me like that, huh?
This will be B-roll. My phone is doing the actual recording. Let's get started with the actual. So, of course, the recipe will be up on the screen right here, which was my grandfather's recipe. I might reference what I'm doing during the video, but I'm mostly going to be talking about the sports fandom, since this video is actually about. Wait. So while I start with the butter, cutting the butter, let's start with basically what is my unpopular opinion on sports fandom. So I don't really see teams or athletes as something or someone to be a fan of. Why are you in my shoes? Basically, I kind of see sports as, not necessarily sports, teams, games, all of that, as a service that you pay for to get entertained. So I have a hard time seeing it as something that you're necessarily a fan of. I do have jerseys for, like, any jersey. I'm saying jerseys. Wait. Quintana? You think I have something nice to eat up here? Is that it? I don't really perceive, I don't know, sports or anything as something to be fan of. You can like a sport, enjoy watching a sport, or being a fan of a specific sport. I don't necessarily understand the concept of being a fan of a specific team or of specific players. And that kind of extends to music as well for me. It expands to kind of the entire entertainment industry, which I clearly put sports in the entertainment industry, and officially that's what they're part of. That's my unpopular opinion, I should say, which, interestingly, when discussing with people around me, I realized that it's only an unpopular opinion for people who watch sports, who are very into sports. All my friends, family, etc., that are not particularly into sports don't think that's an unpopular opinion. They're just like, well, yeah, that's what it is. So I thought it was a very interesting kind of premise or situation. And for context on why I find that so interesting, I did do my master's degree in consumer behavior, or marketing, specialized in consumer behavior. So generally speaking, how people behave in reaction to specific forms of marketing is something that I'm really interested in. Sports fandom, in the end, is exactly that. It's how people react to specific forms of marketing. Basically, the way people are reacting to marketing is creating a certain identity around sports and teams and different reactions around teams. So it ends up creating these fandoms and this reaction that some people might have around teams or sports or athletes or celebrities in general. And in this specific case, I find it really interesting how the marketing creates this sense of identity that fans will have. And it's because the team brand themselves a very specific way, and that way is what attracts fans. So, of course, performance will attract fans, but clearly the way a team markets itself also attracts fans. Because otherwise, the only teams that would have fans are the teams that win. And that's not the case, of course. There's teams that are less successful that also have fans. There are newer teams that have fans. We look, for example, I'm sorry if any of you are fan of the Seattle Kraken in the NHL. But if you're looking at the NHL and the Seattle Kraken, last season was not particularly glorious for them. And they're a very recent team. And yet, the Seattle Krakens still sell out when they play. They still sell jerseys for all of their players. They still have that celebrity culture. They still have that fandom culture around it. And so we can kind of question on how does a team get to the point where they are basically a new team and yet still manage to create this whole fandom and identity system around they're a team. And that is purely marketing, which again, I love because that's what I studied. And although I don't work in sports marketing and I would like to eventually, because sports marketing is so deeply tied to consumer behavior, very few brands have the same sense of loyalty that sports teams have. Go and ask a PSG fan, Paris Saint-Germain fan, soccer. They will be completely against the l'OM, the Marseille, l'Olympique Marseillais team, which is the team from another city in France. So yeah, why are you in my shoes? Is the same in the NHL. You look at someone who's a big fan of the Boston Bruins. I know I'm wearing a Boston sweater. I'm not actually from Boston. I just have family there. And I do enjoy watching the Boston Bruins, I have to admit. Someone who's a huge fan of the Boston Bruins will probably have this really big sense of opposition with the Florida Panthers or with the Maple Leafs. And that's kind of like the team lore thing. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you eating my feet? Huh? Yeah, wait. Quintana? Quintana? Wait. She thinks something is really yummy here. Hmm? You're cute. I love you. So there's obviously multiple things that bring people in. And I'm obviously not a huge team fan. I enjoy teams, I enjoy watching specific teams, but I'm not necessarily disappointed when they lose. So the question would be, what brings people kind of who are like me into sports? Because again, if we're not fans of specific players or team. Okay, I'm sorry, I have to keep track of the recipe because I'm talking at the same time and I'm just kind of lost. I would be curious, because obviously I got into hockey because I like the sport, and to be fair, I had family members that played it. I watched hockey a little bit, or heard about hockey when I was younger. And then I moved to Korea, I started figure skating here, and then I was at the ice rink when there were hockey games, and I ended up kind of watching hockey and falling in love with the sport overall as a viewer. Would I ever play hockey? Sorry if it's shaking, the puppy just went by on the stand. Would I ever play hockey? Absolutely not. That is way too violent of a sport for me to play. I love watching it. You will not catch me dead playing it. Because I do not have that kind of courage. I'm saying that, although my main sport happens to be horse riding, which is not necessarily the first sport you don't get hurt in. I got hurt a few times horse riding, so I'm always afraid of getting hurt, and the sport I did choose ended up probably being the worst in terms of how you get hurt, but that's beside the point. And I think that's really interesting, how people just kind of stumble upon a sport and then end up really liking the sport without being fans. Ow! Puppy! Stop eating my feet. We have a loud puppy in the house with us. Now, I'm assuming, based on people who are most likely to click on a video about someone having an unpopular opinion on teams, I would expect that you are probably a sports fan looking to destroy me in the comments. Most likely. So I'm going to give you a quick explanation on why I see them as a service. Not necessarily something to be fan of, but something to enjoy as a whole. Basically, I see it as a service because I pay to go watch a hockey. I'm paying to go watch something that will entertain me for a few hours. The same way I go and pay for the Nutcracker ballet because I really like ballet. You kind of pay to see something. The people that are playing are doing their job. The same way, I'm sorry, the camera keeps going, like this puppy keeps going by. But it's not like our life depends on it. Paying performers in a way that are just doing their job. It's kind of like, well, pay my hairdresser to do my hair. I'm not a fan of my hairdresser. I appreciate her work and I'm happy when she's done a good job. I love my hairdresser. She's fantastic. But yeah, I'm not a fan. I guess I'm not too emotionally attached to it. And it's the same with teams. Although I have to admit, I would enjoy being a fan just for a day to kind of see how it feels. I would really, really like that. Mostly because I don't know how it feels to really be a fan, and I would just enjoy it to see how that kind of like community or fandom. I think it would be fun to experience. Now, one of the really important or interesting parts for me in the sports industry service is that the fans themselves actually play a role in that service. Because I don't know a lot of people that would go watch or pay to go watch a game where there's no other fans, which interestingly means that part of the service you're paying for and that you're trying to be entertained by is also the fandom itself, which is kind of a maybe strange concept. I'm not sure if or not. But in the end, the fans themselves do have a role in the fandom. And so it's kind of interesting to see how involved in the end the fans are in that service. And if everyone saw sports the way I do, we would not be going very far. Or at least I don't think it's an industry that would work great. It's clearly an industry that's made for people who view sport as fans and see teams as fans, because in the end, a lot of those actual fans are the soul of sports. The NHL would not be the NHL without the fans. And that is, I think, something that is a very interesting concept and something we also have to remember. I'm looking at it from the marketer point of view, where we have to remember as marketers that sports are in large part made by the fans. So it's really interesting how the athletes make the game and athletes kind of create that environment, but then that environment would not actually completely exist or come together without the fans. And so the fans end up being the glue that kind of like bring everything together and make it work. Without the fans, you would just not really have the same environment that people are looking for. Now, we could wonder another thing is, for most fans, a good, fun sports experience would be your team winning. So a good sports experience last year for either the Oilers or the Panthers fans would have been their team winning the Stanley Cup. In the end, the good experience, or the really good experience, was only for the Panthers fan, because the Oilers fans were disappointed coming out of it. Which, now, would you consider coming out of a good, like a really exciting game, disappointed, a good experience or a bad experience? That's also something I would be really curious to hear about, because again, as someone who doesn't come out disappointed or particularly happy if the team I'm supporting won or lost, for me a good game is when I just saw something exciting. So if my team lost in overtime, I'm happy because it means we went all the way to overtime, which means the game was super exciting. It means it was like really, really close the entire time, and that makes for a really exciting game, in my opinion. Now, in university teams, a lot of people will really enjoy the games where the team wins 14-1 because it's the school, you're proud, it's really cool. But is that really a good game or is that a boring game? And I think that is a very individual question to answer, kind of thing to think on when we decide whether we had a good experience or bad. There's only one professional team in Korea. So I should say the one professional Korean team had a game on Sunday. They lost that game, but they lost it, I think it was 5-4 or was it 4-3 in overtime. So the entire game, it was really, really close. They were fighting for the two teams were really fighting for it, and that to me is super fun to watch. Obviously, I support the Korean team because I live in Korea. I didn't really go home disappointed. I literally just took the metro home with a friend and chatted about something else the entire game. Oh no, and we talked about how funny the head coach was. The head coach from the Korean team got really annoyed at the referees, and even though we're in Korea, I kind of started yelling at them in English. To me, that was a fantastic game. Even though the Korean team lost, I had so much fun watching that game that it was a fantastic game. Obviously, if a team I'm supporting loses 6-0, like my university team at the last Koyeonjeon, a huge competition between two big universities in Korea. There's 5 sports. Whoever wins 3 wins the entire thing. So this year, our school won the overall thing, but our school lost hockey 6-1 or 6-0. That's not a good look. Obviously, I was a little disappointed for that one because it's my university and I guess I have a little bit more of an emotional attachment to my university. For that hockey game specifically, we didn't know yet if our school had won, and so I was very disappointed in the score because now basically our university had to win almost all of the remaining games or all of the remaining sports to make sure they won the overall Koyeonjeon, which they ended up doing. And the second that they had won 3 out of the 5 games, I was like, yep, okay, I don't really care about the hockey score anymore. The university won the whole, I'm satisfied. Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit attached to that team just because it is my university, and although I graduated over a year ago now, a year and a half ago, I spent 6 years there, so I guess I'm still, I don't know, attached to it, I guess. And in Korea, there's this very strong belongingness to your university. So depending on where you've been, you're usually really proud of whatever university you went to. And so I am still a very proud alumni of KU. That's why I have a little bit more of an attachment on whether they win. Now, there's something I kind of wanted to push on because clearly the fact that people are so attached is a marketing thing and is something marketers can increase, decrease, and use. And so the thing is that a way of exploiting the fans? Because I do personally think it is, in a way. Because if you're building a narrative around a team, it's only a narrative. It's a marketing ploy. So if you're building this narrative around a team just so you can sell and make money, then I see that kind of as a way of exploiting the fan and the people who are so emotionally attached. I've mentioned I do have one jersey. So I have a jersey from my university and a jersey from the team that I support now here. It does not have a name or a number on it. I just have one of those plain empty jerseys because, again, I find it weird to wear someone's number on me. That's just a personal thing. It's like, unless I personally know that person who's playing, I wouldn't really wear their jersey number with their name on it. But that's, again, a very personal thing. So the jersey I do have does not have any number. Have I ever worn it to a game? Once. The first season I followed the team. So I haven't worn it since, for the very simple reason that I'm always cold. And so there's absolutely no way I'm sitting in an ice rink with just a sweater and a jersey on. I am wearing the full padding. Or in warmer weather, I'm wearing long sleeve hoodie plus short sleeve jacket on. I'm sorry if I'm completely brain scattered. That's just kind of how I we're on our last egg, finally. So now the question of exploitation, which I think is also an interesting question because you're using people's fandom. It's like Apple when they just kind of put everything. It's like when these huge brands are relying on this loyalty to make you purchase again and again and again and all the new stuff. So the same way Apple every year releases a new iPhone and relies on the fact that people are loyal to the Apple brand to go and purchase this new product. They were incredibly at making their design their main feature. They were incredibly successful at using this loyalty and saying, okay, well, now you buy an iPhone, you buy a watch, you buy the iPad, you will buy the MacBook type desktop. And all of that kind of builds up. And they're extremely successful at that. And sports do the same thing, and hockey teams especially do the same thing, where they rely on this loyalty for fans to purchase merch and purchase tickets. And in Korea, the pricing is quite cheap for tickets. For sports tickets, they're very cheap. It's in between $16 and $20 or 20,000 won, 16 to 20 bucks. If you're comparing to prices, for example, to go watch an NHL game, they're not even comparable. To be fair, the players' salaries are probably not comparable either. And the NHL uses the fact that they have so many fans and so many loyal fans to be able to have these really, really high prices. Again, it's kind of demand and offer. When you have so much demand, you can increase the prices and you can make stuff. So that's what we're seeing in the NHL, which means that's also what they do with limited edition jersey. For example, that's just an example is limited edition jerseys or specific event jerseys. So when they do these jerseys for the military night or all of those, when they do those, they're relying on the fact that fans are so loyal that they will purchase this limited edition merch because they feel like they need that limited edition. And in that case, although again, as a marketer, I find it absolutely fascinating, as a consumer, I'm looking at it from the other lens where I'm like, that is kind of exploitative. And that's what teams do. They kind of like create this whole story and this brand, and then they use that brand to have their loyal customer purchase again and again and again stuff. And that's the whole concept of limited editions because, well, if you're just buying one jersey, you're not really the customer they want, to be fair. So I know I'm not particularly the customer the hockey team wants because I purchased one jersey and one pin, specific players. So I'm not going to buy player merch. I'm not going to buy worn jerseys. I do buy a season tickets because the season tickets are super affordable, and for me that's the price of convenience. I know I go to every game and I don't really want to be sitting in line to purchase a seat a week before the game, so I buy a season ticket. That's the price of convenience. But again, in Korea, season tickets are incredibly cheap. So that's but it's really interesting to see, for example, I have friends that are huge fans, and you'll see them purchasing jerseys of specific players, hats of specific players or hats of the team, pins and blankets, and when there's a worn jersey, they'll purchase the worn jersey, and not necessarily sticks. I have seen people buy the sticks. I'm not personally friends with any of the people I've seen buy this, which means I don't really have access to ask them why they do it or what is so interesting in a stick when you don't play hockey. So I don't really have the ability to go and ask them why. So if anyone watching here is someone that buys sticks, please tell me why. Explain to me why you buy sticks like if you're not playing hockey. If you were to use the stick, 100% it makes sense. If you're just going to keep the stick in your home, I'm curious why. Because to me, it's just clutter. And I'm a very cluttered person. You can probably see it from my kitchen. I'm a very messy person. So buying a stick in the end is just extra clutter that I don't know. So I'm kind of curious why you would do it. So yeah, that's the question for you guys. So the next thing I wanted to kind of touch up on, and I'm mostly wanting to touch up on this specific topic because that's kind of how I felt for a while. So I joined hockey games, I started meeting people, and I was seeing how much everybody were huge fans of it. And so I felt like I had to act like that was also how I felt about the team, the players, the hockey game, the everything. I felt like I had to feel that way, which means it made me feel in a way like a lesser fan, that I just liked the sport rather than the team and the players. The fact that I was more interested in just watching the sport and I didn't really care if we lost or won. But in the end, and this is what I've realized after a few years of watching, the thing is I'm still a fan, I'm just not a fan of the same thing as what you would normally consider a fan. So most people consider a fan someone who's fan of a specific team or player. The thing is, I realized over time, you can also be the fan of a sport. You can also be the fan of an activity. So people are easily fan of ballet, for example. They're not just going to go watch one specific dancer. They're not going to be happy for one specific dancer if that dancer gets the role. They just enjoy a really good performance. And with more competitive sports as well, where maybe it's okay to not be a fan of the player or of a team, it's okay to be fan of the sport itself. And it's okay to be fan of the excitement that comes from watching the sport rather than specifically a team or someone. And in the end, I think that's something I learned, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion, I'm not sure. I think overall my unpopular opinion is just that a sports game is a service and not necessarily something to be a fan of, but that's just because it's my feeling. It doesn't actually mean I think no one should be a fan of, because as I mentioned earlier, I think part of the experience is the fandom. And so if no one was a fan, the whole experience would be different and much less interesting and much less fun for everyone. So I think the fans are a huge part of a team and the value of the sport. The conclusion I kind of came up with is just that there's no right or wrong way to be a fan, even though some people might make you feel like you're a lesser fan or too much of a fan, or that this way is not correct or that way is not correct. I think there is no right or wrong way. But the important thing is that people are honest with themselves on why they are a fan. Are they a fan of the sport? Are they the fan of a team? Or are they the fan of a specific player? Because someone who says, oh, I'm a fan of the team when they're only a fan of the sport are also lying to themselves, and in a way I think probably hurting their own experience of the game by lying to themselves. So is there a wrong way of being a fan? No. Is there a right way of being a fan? No. I think the only right way of being a fan is being honest with yourself on why you're a fan. I'm a nerd. Like, I am 100% a nerd, so I have absolutely no fear in saying that. And I do think, I should put the timer. And so now I have these in the oven, and so they'll be out soon enough. I'm kind of curious, you as a fan, what fan are you? What kind of fan are you? Are you the super emotionally intense fan? And how does that feel? Or are you more the detached fan? Are you a fan of a specific person? Are you a fan of a specific team? If yes, tell me who. I'm kind of curious, and also why. I'm kind of want to know who you're a fan of, why you're a fan of them. All of that is like information I'm super curious about. That is your case, because I would absolutely love. So anyway, let me know if you are any of these, and I would think it would be super interesting to find out. Alright, so we have finished the choux and we've all kind of completed the topic. I was all over the place the whole time, but that's okay, that's just kind of how I am. So yeah, please let me know what kind of fan you are, what kind of topic you'd like for me to talk about, and just kind of randomly chat during my baking session, cooking sessions. Obviously, I'm more focused on hockey, so try to keep the topics either in marketing or hockey if you have any ideas of topics. And thank you. Yeah. And well, that's about it. The recipe is down below if you are here for the cooking and you want the recipe. Yeah, that's about it. So if you've been here the entire time, please like, comment, and follow if you want some more cooking and chatting video. And we will see you very, very soon. Bye! Say bye-bye. Bye-bye! Also, I have to have one of these. They're really good. I can't wait for tomorrow. Normally, you would fill them in with like some kind of custard cream and put some icing on top. I like them just raw like this. They're so freaking good.